So we both watched the trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog, the trailer that is setting the internet ablaze, and it's a trailer that's probably left me with many questions, probably more questions than most trailers leave me with. But one of the main questions I'm left with is James Marsden going to be cucked by Sonic the Hedgehog?
Why is that?
Well, the reason that's a question that kind of persists in my mind is because James Marsden is Hollywood's favorite cuck. If you think about his career, we look at X-Men, where he was cucked by Wolverine. We have Superman Returns, where he was cucked by Supes himself. We have 27 Dresses, a movie where he did not get the girl. We have The Notebook, where he was cucked by the Goss. There are multiple examples of this happening. Apparently it happens on Westworld, too, even though it's not really a movie. But for some reason, whenever... Oh, Enchanted, the movie Enchanted, you ever see that one?
No.
Yeah, also happens to him. For some reason, this is the guy when it comes to this kind of character.
Probably the worst thing to be typecast as.
It could be the worst thing to be typecast as. I can't think of any things that are worse to be typecast as, except for maybe a Nazi, which that one guy, the guy that was actually in Captain America Civil War, he played Baron Zemo.
He's also in Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah, he's in Inglourious Basterds. He's also in another movie recently where it was about a Nazi's wife falling in love with somebody. I don't know. I didn't see it, but there you go. That's probably the only thing that's worse to be typecast as.
If he is cucked by Sonic, I think the lady involved in this will really be getting the short end of the stick. Sex with Sonic does not seem very fulfilling given his gotta go fast mantra.
You might be right, but it could be an interesting experience for the lady in question, and also would be very interesting and provocative for Hollywood to do, to have a relationship between a sentient hedgehog that goes real fast and a regular human lady. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think The Shape of Water opened us up more to the idea. Monster fuckers.
Yes, monster fuckers is a huge internet subculture right now, I think, and probably a subculture that extends to real life. I'm sure there's women everywhere that want their men to be dressed in Loch Ness monster costumes.
That's what furries are.
That you're right. It is basically what furries are. However, I think furries are shorthand for cuddly, anthropomorphic, Disney type animals, the Zootopia crowd, while the monster fuckers I see more as people who are really into
Cthulhu.
Yeah, Cthulhu,
getting robbed by
Bigfoot,
big
Nessie,
yeah.
All of these, they're into the more, I guess,
less
aggressive
humanoid,
energy. Yeah,
right?
the more aggressive energy that they're able to tame. I guess the same basic principle applies to women who go for bikers or whatever. Well, do they still do that?
I don't know. I'm also
I live in the 50s.
Too much of a nice guy, I don't know what the women go for. Anyway, also from this trailer, Jim Carrey doing his usual shtick, which is surprising given that he's been practically retired for a decade.
It's really
this is what
really
he chooses
strange
to come back to.
He's a really strange guy. I had no idea what what aspect of the script or whatever it was, what the pull was for him to come back from basically just being on Twitter and painting grotesque pictures of Donald Trump. I thought that was his new career, and I was okay. I've learned to accept it over the years, and now he's coming back and doing his Ace Ventura thing, but he has a big mustache.
Maybe there's some low-key anti-fascist undertones to this movie.
There very much could be. I think there's always a possibility that's the case, and that would be a pleasant surprise when I see this, if I ever see it, which I don't know. It's coming out in November. That's my birthday month.
I'll take it. That'll be my gift for you.
We'll go see Sonic. Wouldn't be the worst gift I've ever got.
We'll stop at Sonic on the way. We'll get you some chili dogs, a couple feet of meat, and then we'll sneak them into the movie, and we'll watch Sonic together.
We'll eat chili dogs. We'll watch Sonic.
And by the end of it, we'll be nauseous from the sheer amount of chili dogs we consumed, and then also from the movie itself.
It will be thrown up in the movie theater, disturbing the children. That will very much be there.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to me. I think that's a good time. We'll keep that in our back pocket for once November comes around. But
we should introduce ourselves very quickly.
We absolutely should. My name is Nick.
And I'm Andrew.
And you're listening to Total Entertainment Forever. This is a podcast where we discuss all the major important figureheads of pop culture, all right, such as our blue friend Sonic the Hedgehog. All right, you might hear us talking more about him in the future. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. And we talk about all sorts of other stuff, too. We talk about movies. We talk about music. Talk about video games. We talk about it all served in one single package for you in the form of this podcast.
We assemble all of these things. Isn't there like another group that assembles quite frequently?
Yes. I believe that the name of this group might also start with an A.
No, I was thinking of the Mystery Men.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The hit ensemble, like, was a 1999 superhero film.
That movie.
Where were you going?
The movie. I don't know where I was going. That movie is where the Smash Mouth single All Star came from.
Oh yeah,
not Shrek.
Predates Shrek.
Yeah, it originally came from Mystery Men, and if you watch the music video, the Mystery Men is in the music video. But that's actually not what we're talking about, believe it or not. What we're actually going to be talking about today. Sorry,
this is a solo episode.
I'm sorry, I lied. I'm sorry, I lied to you. I misled you. But we are actually going to be talking about the Avengers. All right, it's a little movie that you may have heard of that made $1.2 billion in its opening weekend. And we are going to be discussing it. We are going to be dissecting it. We're going to be talking about what it means for the culture. And we're gonna have some laughs. We're gonna have some fun, I hope. And first, before delving into more spoilerific territory, because chances are by the numbers that you've already seen it, but in case you are the one of 3 people who have not, or in case you were one of the people that accidentally spoiled it and are now hospitalized because of angry mobs descending upon you, then this is for you. This is a spoiler warning. We are going to delve into spoilers, but first we're going to have a general discussion about our opinions, and we will once again bring out the spoiler warning for when we truly do delve into the spoilers. So anyway, Andrew, what did you think of the film?
Okay, well, in the past, I have given my general stance on these Marvel movies, these superhero movies.
You are against them.
How they're very homogenous. Not even against them. Like I said, they're very homogenous, and you know what you're getting every time you go. And that's sort of what I walked away from with this. Is if you like Marvel movies, you're gonna love this one. And if you're indifferent or you don't like them, this is not gonna be the one to win you over.
It would be a confusing one to start with, that's for sure.
Also, I'm just talking about the quality of the movie.
That's true as well. It is. I think they hit really all the major marks. To me, even we saw it together today. I saw it for the second time today, and even while getting steadily more sick and with a bigger headache as the movie came along, partly because of me being sick and also because of the bad quality of. I don't know if it was the projector, or if it was the 3D, or if it was our very inconvenient seating, but I felt like shit by the end of the film. But I still enjoyed myself. I think the movie is solid. I don't think it's as tight as Infinity War, which I feel just worked better as a singular product. But I do think that I think that it works for what it's trying to do. I think it serves just enough fan service. I think it serves just enough variety. And I think it really does all these things pretty well, all things considered.
It ties together
22 movies.
Very well.
22 movies.
Like probably the perfect way to cap it off.
It really, I guess it really is.
I will give it to them. This was a monstrous task because, it's 22 movies, or was this the 22nd? Yeah, that you have.
This is the 22nd.
The main plot, the multiple subplots you have to cut
a lot of character
together.
Arcs that you have to go through,
and they did it amazingly well.
Yeah, and especially for its main cast, it's in many ways a send off for the main Avengers crew that we were introduced to many years ago and first teamed together for the first Avengers film in 2012, back when I was but a freshman in high school, I believe.
We watched that together in theaters too.
Actually, we were a sophomore.
Yeah,
I was a sophomore. Yeah, but yeah, we saw that in theaters. So the history of these films run deep for me. It's difficult for me to perhaps even objectively look at them as their own thing, because in many ways, they existed for a good majority of my formative years. So I am a little bit biased. I'll concede on that point. But at the same time, even looking at it objectively, where it falters in the traditional sense of being a movie, I think it succeeds monstrously in many, as you said earlier, moments that it was serving. And like you said, the way it sort of tied together beautifully the arcs of many, many, many different characters that we've been introduced to for the past 11 or so years. And without further ado, I suppose that'll put us into the spoiler discussion here. And
yeah, so if you haven't seen it yet,
don't know why you're listening to
like
this,
three
but
people, just turn it off now.
Just turn it off now, and come back to us
next week.
In fact, just start listening to it during the movie. I say, start listening to the rest of this podcast during the movie. It'll be like you're watching colorful commentary from
with the gang.
With the gang, yeah, exactly. So, or whatever it is you decide to do, spoilers. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so
I can't believe Ant-Man really crawled up Thanos' ass.
That was really surprising that they went with that ending.
It was incredible. It was everything I wanted and more.
It was hot, I'll tell you that. It was a very strangely
got
erotic
the graphic detail.
Yeah.
Squirming the
into the
detail
orifices.
on sort of the crinkles around Thor.
You got
Thanos
exactly, and you saw Thanos get like really aroused as it was.
You know what's happening. Like his eyes roll back.
Yeah, you see his
beads,
beads of sweat is rolling down and falling into his crinkly chin, just and and he's like, of all the years of violence and genocide perpetuated by me on many planets, never have I felt such orgiastic joy from my work as I have now. And then he grows big and explodes. And Paul Rudd says something goofy. I don't know. He says, "Wow, it was really dark in there." He said, I don't know. But that is in fact not how it ends. But that would be a good ending too, I think.
That would have been ideal for me.
Yeah.
As somebody not emotionally connected to these films, that would have been like ideal. I would have given Marvel a pass for anything else they do in the future.
Would have been a very ballsy ending, to be sure. But what they end up doing is more, I guess, par for the course. I wouldn't say it's completely par for the course, because in many ways, some of the things they do here, I think, are actually kind of risky in some ways, because they're obviously, like, you knew that they were going to reverse the sort of subversive ending of Infinity War. They were going to erase it. Everyone knew it. And I think this was the best way to do it. I think the stakes were still pretty high because they didn't... I was afraid that they were going to completely reverse like every event that would happen. That happened in Infinity War and perhaps even beyond that, but that wasn't the case. And I think giving Tony Stark like a daughter was probably a really good plot decision, so they wouldn't go that route. So what they ended up doing was, the first 30 or so minutes is like a weirdly somber sort of reflection about all these characters and how they deal with their ultimate failures, and they all deal with it in different ways. For instance, Tony Stark decides to just completely give up and abandon any kind of heroics and build his family. Steve Rogers and Natasha are basically just sulking for
holding together like a piecemeal version of the team.
Just kind of not being able to let go of what happened, because they actually kill Thanos in the first 10 minutes, which is another strange plot choice.
Great, yeah.
Where he is literally just beheaded in the first, I think, 10 minutes. And that's the first of the very strange plot choices, and I think that one kind of works. I'm a little more apprehensive about him coming back at the end. I think maybe him getting killed at the first 10 minutes, and then having maybe some other threat be the primary source of conflict for the remainder of the film, and maybe the time travel stuff remaining intact. I think that would have been maybe a little more...
I don't know about introducing a new character and literally the final
right, maybe not a new character, but maybe some bringing in a few of the older threats that maybe come across what they're trying to do, the way Thanos, the way the Thanos from 2014 does. Maybe having, I don't know, not Red Skull, because Red Skull's doing his own thing, but bringing back maybe Zemo or Ultron or any of these other like kind of B-listers and having them team together. I think that maybe would have been more interesting rather than bring back Thanos and have Thanos basically just decide that he wants to just destroy the universe now. Rather than his still like fairly coherent but still misanthropic and very wrong philosophy, which was a very disturbing trend to see, by the way. Like
Thanos was right, people.
Yeah, those people, those fucking like weirdos that write these think pieces after Infinity War came out, saying, "Oh, maybe Thanos has a point." Like all the people that worry about overpopulation. Those people, you frankly steer clear of them because they either have no actual grasp of what the problems in society and the world at large is being caused by, or they are operating in bad faith. So steer clear of them, please and thank you. But he kind of disregards that by the end, and he's just kind of a slightly more generic film, still with a lot of presence, and Brolin's performance, I think, is still really strong. He's really strong. He adds a lot of gravitas to this character, and I think he's a big reason why Thanos is now a household name, and he is now, which is really strange. Like, and that's another way that these films actually do surprise me, is how they consistently manage to make these characters who were maybe C-listers and B-listers at best in the comics, make them basically household names. Even from the very beginning, go back to 2008, Iron Man was not a very popular character. He was mostly, like, people knew of him, but no one really had any respect for him as a character or his history or whatever. And same to a certain extent with Captain America and Thor as well. These were all like not very popular characters that were bumped up to the A-list very quickly. Like, Justice League was pretty much universally seen as like the superior heroic team up property, and Avengers was just seen as like the bench warmers, if you will. And they've been able to consistently introduce new characters and have them work for people in some way, have them strike a chord, like Thanos.
Guardians, I think, is the best example of that, because they've been around since like the 70s or 80s, and
and they were never like I never even knew who they were until the Guardian. And I'm a fairly decent comic book guy, and I never knew really who they were until Guardians was announced, and I did my research. And I think the way they did this was just shifting the characters enough, but still kind of remaining true to what they were in Stanley, Kirby, Ditko, all these people's original vision. And I think Faihi really deserves a lot of credit here. He as a producer and as a showrunner, I think he's basically made almost no missteps, and him and his team. Because there's other people that are involved with this. I talked to you about this lady who was basically in charge of all the casting. I forget her name, but if you look her up, she's basically cast everyone. And I think the casting here is almost key to a lot of the strongest elements of these characters and why they strike such big chords with people.
Yeah, I gotta give it to Marvel. Like, as literal as I like this trend, they have done what nobody else has been able to do.
It's true.
And that is create this universe, make it consistent, make it cohesive, and make it last. They sort of kickstarted this trend of expanded universes that everyone else who's tried their hand has just faltered horribly, like right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
There was that like monster universe that they were trying to do that took 2 movies. They tried to launch it twice.
Are you referring to the Dark Universe?
The Dark Universe. Yeah,
it's pretty dark.
It was like like that Dracula Untold movie.
I saw that in theaters.
Yeah. And then what was the other one? Like,
it was The Mummy.
The Mummy,
with Tom Cruise.
They failed twice to
They
kickstart
couldn't
this
even
universe.
do it because they're putting the cart before the horse. Like, nobody fucking gives a shit about the Dark Universe.
Yeah, and then even like DC though. Like DC would have been like the second best equipped to do something like this.
Yeah, and I think
that every step of the way, they've dropped them.
And I really think it's because, again, they're kind of putting the cart before the horse. They make Man of Steel, which was supposed to be the sort of starting point.
But I don't want to get into that. I'm just.
But real quick. Let me finish. Real quick. Because what they do is they rush into the next thing. The next thing immediately after that is Batman v Superman, but also featuring Wonder Woman, and then immediately after that is the fucking Justice League movie. There's no breathing room, and I think these movies are really good. The Marvel movies, that is, are really good about offering the breathing room, enough time to get used to these characters, enough time to get attached to them, and none of these other cinematic universes really done that well. I don't even know if it's possible to do it as well as they've done it. I think there's a lot of luck involved here, and a lot of rolling with the punches that they've managed to do, such as what they've done with Thor in the past few films. Thor, a character that wasn't like, I don't think it was really anyone's favorite character around when Dark World came out, when he was kind of more self-serious and Shakespearean.
Yeah.
But they managed to find a good angle with him, because they find out that Chris Hemsworth is secretly a terrific comedic actor.
He is.
And, yeah, and then they work that in, and I think this kind of thing involves a lot of planning, but also involves a lot of improvisation, and they manage to strike the right chords almost every single time. Again, with very few missteps. How that all culminates in this movie is basically, like I was saying, with a somber first third, and then with a fairly wacky and unexpected second act, or I don't know if that's what counts as say. It's hard for me to find the acts.
It's 3 goddamn hours long.
Yeah,
it's segmented though.
It is somewhat
clearly
segmented. It's one of those movies, kind of like Return of the King, where there's like a million endings too. It's I think as a film, it's kind of clunky in some aspects, but it manages to keep fresh. So I was never, except for where I was like sweating and with like a throbbing head in the theater, I was never really like bored through the film, which is miraculous for how ridiculously long it is. And it is ridiculously long because they had the time traveling thing, which on paper looks like one of the worst ideas imaginable, but to me, I think they kind of stick the landing on it for the most part. I think they managed to add a lot of humor to the film in these segments, kind of reminiscent of maybe, I don't know, Rick and Morty or something, and a lot of more character building moments too for these characters.
Yeah, the actual characters really carry that second half.
Yeah, they do, because it's obviously not being carried by the time travel logistics.
Yeah, had they like focused, that would have been like a. If they had put more emphasis on that, would have been a big mistake. It's best to keep the details vague.
Yeah.
Let like Bruce Banner like hit his dabs.
Exactly. That's what we're all here for. Is hit the Hulk dabs, and
let Paul Rudd have his moment. He was surprisingly good. I haven't seen any of the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah, he's consistent in those movies. Yeah. Like he's just Paul Rudd's just a funny, affable guy, and he manages to carry that over into his Ant-Man persona as well. And then after that segment, which again I think works basically, we have the ending, which is this like monumental fucking like meetup of like 1,000 characters fighting on screen, and it's basically a live action version of a George Perez splash page from the comics, and it really whenever I see something like this and the way it's done, and it's done very well, I almost have a Pavlovian response to where I'm like giddy, I'm thrilled, and I'm having a good time. I'm just seeing all these people together, just seeing them just do. I don't know, like to me it has a base appeal that's more is not really in tune with what I get from traditional cinema, but more from like a WrestleMania type standpoint. It's
just like the scale and like how bombastic it is.
And
it's
with
like
all these colorful characters, and like less of a focus on the plot and more of a focus on more like melodrama and like humor and all that stuff. That's why I kind of liken it to that.
Good old fashioned ass kicking.
Yeah, just ass kicking too.
It's raw. It's not raw. It's very heavily produced, but like the adrenaline's there.
It is.
It's good, and it always looks great.
Yeah.
Like it's never like muddy. They always keep it very clear. You can tell what's going on.
It's always
which
well
is surprising when you have that many people on screen at once.
It's amazing how like a lot of people, including me to an extent, were worried about, oh wow, all these characters in one movie for the first Avengers. Like, I don't know if that's going to work. Is that going to be coherent?
Yeah, it was like 6.
Yeah, it was like 6 people.
And now we're pushing like 100.
It's an insane amount of people in this movie. Like, which is also like lampshaded somewhat in the final battle where Doctor Strange says, "Was that everyone?" And then his sidekick Wong says, "Oh, you wanted more?" And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of fucking people. Like, I don't know how this can be topped, if I'm being honest, and I don't know what their plan is for trying to top it either. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm definitely going to take a break from these films for a while. I mean, I'll probably get back into the swing of things, but like this kind of thing, this kind of monumental exercise can be pretty exhausting in many ways. And I could see why people would be sort of repelled to it on that level, I guess. But at the same time, I like people who are on the internet, like, saying cape shit, saying that term specifically, are, like, pretty much the most boring people imaginable. And I don't know, it's really like empty attempts at being subversive, because this is like pop culture touchstone at the moment. This is what it is.
I empathize with them a lot
No, I
more.
don't, because they're
Just
always
'cause
so
this is,
snide.
like, I'm okay with that though. Like, if you're like into cinema, you know, and you could look at that and look at, oh, they're snobs. But if you're like into the actual art of cinema, I can see why, you know, having one of these movies come out like every 4 months, and then having to deal with just the overload that comes with that, because these are not just movies; these are like big cultural events.
Yes,
like this, it's like permanently ingrained in our culture at this point. So I can see if you're like an actual movie person having to deal with this so consistently, and sort of like watching new original films go by the wayside in favor of movies like this, where it's more playing toward like the brand, it's building the brand. Than it is like creating like unique new experiences. I can understand where the anger comes from, and they might express it in a really snobby way. But I think it's a sincere fear, and it's one that I kind of have too.
I suppose, though, I understand where the fear is coming from, but I see them in a lot of and I can't speak for all these people, but whenever I see people complain about this kind of thing, I see them basically, for the most part, just attacking the wrong target. They're more attacking the idea of comic book entertainments, and I think, to me, comic books are a genuine art form, and I think there's a lot of effort and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that are put into them. You know, and I think it being expressed in cinematic form, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. They are attacking that specific aspect of it, or they're attacking the audience, like they're attacking like John Q. popcorn. And, you know, and to me, that's I think that's the wrong bag, man, because if you're going to attack anything for what's happening to independent cinema, or even just cinema in itself as an art form, then I think the best way to, like, if you're really going to attack what the cause is surprise, you got to attack capitalism, buddy. You got to attack this is where we were going. Sorry. You have to attack the globalized commercial juggernauts that is sort of backing these films, and is what's kind of keeping them sort of self-perpetuating, and it's what's keeping them so culturally invasive. That's, to me, what the problem is, and you can't get to the heart of the problem by cheap swipes at, like, you know, people that are my age that happen to enjoy a good superhero
that's
story.
Much easier, you have to admit, than staging a
I'm
revolution.
look, I'm not even saying you have to.
That's how you're making it sound. It's like, oh, you're gonna criticize my movies, you little bitch. You better
look. No, I'm
you're
not saying,
allowed to do that. If
I'm
you're
not,
gonna complain, you have to try to take down.
I'm not saying anyone's allowed
neoliberalism.
I'm not saying anyone is allowed to do anything or not do anything. I'm saying that if they really wanted to get at the heart of the problem, if they really truly cared about cinema as an art form and what was destroying it, then they're much better off attacking what I stated, rather than, you know, people who are comic book fans, or people who just like to have a communal, enjoyable experience, you know, by watching these kind of, I don't want to say low art, but just popcorn entertainment and stuff. Popcorn entertainment that is becoming more and more serialized and less self-contained. And I think that is a problem to me. That's kind of, you know, sort of rearing its head more and more, and I can understand where the fear is coming from. I don't know, like, maybe I just don't like snobs. I think I'm just over snobbery. That could be it. I mean, I'm a snob too. Let's make no bones about it. But I just like things, and I don't like it when people don't like things that I like. That's where this is truly all coming from.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay, so before we dip into the sort of depressing cultural implications here any more than we have already, let's just discuss the film itself. Let's see, favorite moments. You got any?
Favorite moments? No. Not necessarily moments, but there were some standout characters.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, the characters are really like the backbone of this thing.
Absolutely.
The plot was just so fucking loosey-goosey. So my favorite,
was pretty loose.
yeah, was like watching Thor's development over this movie. At the beginning, we referenced that Thanos is killed just right off the bat, and that's because Thor just straight up decapitates him.
Oh yeah,
with a fucking axe.
It's awesome.
And so we spend like the first half, the somber first half, he's like hoping and brooding, that he failed to stop Thanos' plan and that he failed to stop the destruction of his home world, and he's just a big bulky dumb failure. Big old meathead, not good at very much. And so when we revisit him in sort of the quirky, funny second part of the movie, he has lost his six-pack and just become a big flabby alcoholic
and probably a stoner. Let's be honest.
Yeah, who's like chilling with the aliens from Ragnarok, who are just like sitting in the background eating pizza and playing Fortnite.
Hot couch boys.
Yeah. And he has like his own miniature arc over the course of this movie, because later on we see he sort of like lost like the bravery, not even bravery, just like the chutzpah, the stupidity that let him like charge head on in the situation.
The sort of confidence, that was like so prominent. That was such a huge part of his character for so many films up to Infinity War, basically. Yeah, and I think some people actually had problems with this. Who else I hate?
Who?
Fanboys.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they So I honestly, I just don't like a lot of things, but it's a lot of them were complaining about
the
Thor.
Fringe. Okay, if you're on the extreme of anything, you're probably wrong.
Yeah.
If you're a centrist, though, if you're in the middle of anything, you're also wrong.
There's just a lot of wrong out there. There's
a very thin line that you need to occupy. And if you don't, you're probably an ass.
Yeah. You got to be cool and nuanced, like us.
Like us.
Or else you're wrong, and we don't like you, probably.
Turn this off.
But I think, besides the fanboys talking about how they didn't like Thor and how they didn't like how the Russo brothers, the directors of this film, treated his character, I think it's fairly consistent, frankly, with him, like, even from the very beginning. He's someone who never really understood what failure was, because he's so friggin' powerful and so friggin' confident all the time, and rightfully so. He's a golden god. He's got a cool hammer. He's got all sorts of fucking powers and successes under his belt, and
he got to date Natalie Portman, and all sorts of successes, and I feel like him facing failure is a really interesting turn for him, and a lot of the characters in this film too. Then, because as previously referenced, the first part of this film is all just them brooding and dealing with their shit, and that's a really interesting angle for them that I wasn't really expecting. It was sort of interesting just seeing them talk their shit out. I really like that segment in the film. I think Thor is hilarious in this as well. He's hilarious, and then also I just wanted to finish that off.
Sure.
Where he gets a full arc over the course of the movie, because he gets his redemption. There's a really touching scene where doing the time traveling, when he gets to talk to his mom, and she sort of like inspires him to quit being the flabby fuck, and sort of channel old Thor, and at the end he's dueling with Thanos again, so Thor got his groove back.
He did.
Very very impressive, like that miniature arc he had. He's probably like one of the MVPs of this movie for me.
It's a miniature arc, but it's also a multi-movie arc, and I think that's what these movies do the best, are these types of arcs. And I agree with you. Big fan of Thor in this film. Big fan of his basic. Yeah, and I really did like that scene with him and his mother when they were time traveling, because I don't think his mother really got a fair shake in those original Thor movies, played by Rene Russo, by the way. And I feel like her having that was sort of retroactively making that character better, and that was really appreciated, honestly. And someone else who I just want to talk about real quick that also has a similar treatments throughout all these films, from his very first film, is Iron Man, Tony Stark, who his sort of his character progression throughout these films is really interesting, because he starts off obviously as like ultra capitalist, then he gets a heart, then after the events of the Avengers, he sort of has some kind of sense of PTSD from what happens when he's like in space and almost dies, almost sucked out of that portal or whatever it is happens, and he kind of deals with that throughout Iron Man 3, and then he sort of tries to work through that in some of the other films by creating like a murder robot, where his paranoia and obsession with trying to sort of make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen to Earth or to him ever again, gets the better of him, and he makes many mistakes. And for a couple of movies, I just straight up saw him as an asshole. Like in Age of Ultron and in Civil War, like I see him as a very flawed person who is becoming somewhat authoritarian because of his own insecurities. After that, you sort of see him you sort of see him become face to face with his fears in Infinity War. He faces them, he loses, and then by the end of Endgame, you see him make the ultimate sacrifice and is finally able to rest, as Pepper Potts says, because his whole life for the past decade has been a life of being obsessed with the idea of control and the idea of trying to fix what is unfixable. And I think it's a really satisfying arc all around for him too. And yeah, and it totally Infinity War and Endgame totally won me over on Tony Stark again. After in Age of Ultron and Civil War, I was basically like tired of him. I was tired of his sass. I was tired.
He was just like openly malicious.
Yeah,
just outright. Like very few like redeeming traits over those films.
Yeah. But
up until meeting Peter, sort of like
right.
soften him again.
Yeah. He sort of taps into his parental instincts a little bit with Peter Parker, and then when he has that daughter too. And it's interesting seeing that side of him, and I think it really works for him. And I think that what they end up doing with him is probably one of the most satisfying things they could have done with him. Some people, were also complaining about his death in this because they wanted him to have a happy ending. And I think, but I really do think that a character like him, and how he ends up being like the only happy ending.
Can't.
Yeah, exactly.
He's always going to be fixated.
Exactly.
On this.
Exactly. He's just even when he tries to let go, and when he finds like even the slightest opportunity to get back into the game, he does it. He just fixes time travel in like a night, and he joins the rest of them in doing it. Like there's no real happy ending for him because these threats are going to keep coming, and he's going to.
It's like, all right, one more time. Like,
exactly.
Sorry, Pepper, this is the last one.
This was the happiest ending he could have probably gotten,
yep.
or at least the most poetic and the most satisfying arc, coming full circle, even culminating with him saying, "I am Iron Man," just like he did at the end of the very first Iron Man film back in 2008. Very satisfying stuff to me as well. And I believe you wanted to talk about the Hulk.
I do.
Another favorite of ours.
I've decided the only way I'm ever going to watch another Marvel movie is if Hulk gets his own movie, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, and it's him playing the exact same character he did in this.
The Professor Hulk thing, I believe, is what it's referred to in the comics.
Yeah, where he's goofier in this than he is in anything else up to this point. Because even in like Ragnarok, he was sort of playing like the straight man. And here he's just like I said, he's dabbing. He's like talking to the kids.
He's so lame, but it's fun.
Yeah, he's sort of like an old dad who's like trying to relate to like his younger sons.
And it's even better because he's like in the body of like this green this green monster just casually hanging out.
Just like monstrous.
Just hanging out with his friends
in a diner, like eating
tacos.
Well, no, that was later. Like when they were in the diner at the beginning, and it's like this massive bowl of eggs, just like casually. Yeah, and then the tacos.
Yeah, no, it's.
So yeah, he was really good. He was another guy who really got fleshed out. More so in this movie than anything else.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, seeing the progression of this character as well, actually, throughout the whole series. Because in many ways, the Incredible Hulk is like one of their from 2008 as well.
It's like brushed under the rug.
Yeah, it's kind of it can be. I think it can be seen by many as a misfire. I think it's just like an okay movie. Like even for its time, it seemed pretty derivative. So and I don't really revisit it very often. In fact, I think Ang Lee's Hulk. I don't know if this is still an unpopular opinion. I think it's far superior in almost every conceivable fashion. I do think it's interesting that you could probably pretend that movie's in this universe because it ends in South America and the Incredible Hulk begins in South America, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the Ed Norton thing, they do kind of brush that under the rug, probably because like Betty Ross, I don't think has really ever mentioned that often in the subsequent films, and I think that might be because of the Ed Norton thing. They're maybe a little bit bitter about him trying to kind of take over the reins of the Incredible Hulk a little bit.
Yeah, I don't like if they had the plans for the MCU at the time, he would have sort of derailed everything.
Yeah, no, because he's not a team player.
No, like
Ed Norton.
In the past, he's American History X. There was a whole debacle over him running final edit.
Yeah, I think there was I think there was a situation for American History X where he was like literally like locked the director out of a room while he was like editing guerrilla style the American History X film. Yeah, no, he's like one of those people. He's just a tough guy to work with.
I fucking love him though.
Yeah, no, Ed Norton is
one of my favorite actors.
I mean, he's one of our generation's best actors, that's for sure. But I honestly think Mark Ruffalo though, like even from the beginning, from the Avengers, like I think he was a better fit for this version of the character, and seeing his struggles kind of change, and seeing the Hulk kind of go from like the mindless rage monster to slightly developing a little bit with each film is interesting too, like developing in almost like a baby would. I think that's kind of fun and interesting, and it culminating in him basically combining the brains with the brawn. Pretty cool. I dig it, and I hope that I see a little more of Professor Hulk in the future. We'll see.
All right, and then we had a friend of the pod tweeted us, wanted us to talk specifically about Carol Danvers.
Stop thinking about dabbing. But yeah, no, I don't. So yeah, we did have a request, and we will talk about literally anything that is requested by us, as long as you promise to continue listening to us. So keep that in mind, people. You probably don't have much to say about Carol Danvers because she's barely in this fucking movie.
She's a real bad bitch, though. She comes out the very last minute, like takes
down.
Oh no,
she's like Super Saiyan like level like powers. Like it's really impressive, and I think I think what she does in this film is basically just offer like monstrous amount of muscle that helps like with their tasks. And I think she's a character that probably will have hopefully a little more to do in the future. I thought like I probably mentioned at some point, I thought Captain Marvel was just okay, and this is not because I hate women, but just because I think
that's an entirely unrelated idea.
That's true. That's something else I need to suss out separately, but I think the movie was just kind of derivative as far as an origin story is concerned. I didn't think they tonally or aesthetically let it stand out that much from some of the other films. I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities there. What with bringing back Guardians villain Ronan and have him do absolutely nothing again, or having them, and this has been a complaint about MCU films that I've had in the past, just have them try to do like a 90s buddy cop thing with her and Nick Fury, but also just not really commit to that. I think there's a few problems there, but I do think that Danvers' character, as far as what she represents, is probably stronger than how she's fleshed out in both these movies. But Brie Larson, obviously, you don't need me to say this, good actress. Won an Oscar for Room.
Best haircut in the game too.
Yeah. Her haircut in this movie, as Maggie said, was big lesbian energy, I believe, is what she was implying, and I'm inclined to agree. And I hope this is fleshed out in the future, although I fear that might not be the case.
She might just be like too overpowered to really
have like
her,
normal
play
relationships.
Consistently, yeah.
That might be it, because they're gonna have to find like some way to limit her powers or something.
She did, like I said, in literal seconds what nobody else, like that whole squad of people, could not do. What she meant is like she just burst out of the sky. She
decimated like the entire fleet,
like 80 fucking missiles, and then just sunk the whole fleet.
And it was cool. Don't get me wrong.
Cool as hell. Yeah, it was a really badass moment, but you can't like have her like hovering around.
So we're probably gonna have to
like realistic.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find some kind of kryptonite or whatever for her in the future. I look forward to seeing what they do for her. Like I said, I like.
Luckily, they have it out though. You referenced in the movie how she's like out on the other planets.
It's true, and I think that's a perfectly like logical like out in the context of these films, because we know that there's like a million planets, and obviously. Not all of them have Avengers, so I'm fine with that being the outs, because the universe is a very large place, and you can't always be around when you're needed, I guess. But yeah, no, I liked that there was some little girl sitting behind us who was really excited whenever she was on screen, so that was pretty fun. And I like that I like that the Chuds get angry about her existence, and that makes me happy as well. Another thing they were really angry about was that scene where Captain Marvel and the rest of the women just sort of have their moment, which, it was like a really short moment, but, it played into the rest of the various fan service moments of that final battle, and I think fit in perfectly fine, and it's not like they dwelled on it or anything, but of course...
No, yeah, they didn't, force it.
No, it wasn't, it fit in perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But of course, people were still angry about it. Even after we were talking about it, I was just scrolling through the internet, and of course, people were just were complaining about it, saying that
More
it
than
was
2 women on my screen at once.
Yeah,
Cultural Marxism.
That's pretty cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Having women do things like at more than one at a time and not with another man. That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
The idea that Peter Parker needed these women to protect him is inherently absurd.
Peter Parker Protection Squad. I'm about it. It's look. He's a kid. He needs his protection. It's fine. And if someone needs to do it, And yeah, so really, I was absolutely satisfied with almost every aspect of this film. Again, a couple of clunky things thrown about. I don't know really how they could have improved some of these things. One of the things I felt was a little clunky was Captain America's ending to the story involving the logistics of time travel.
The actual ending was great. Another really good send-off.
Yeah, exactly.
He gets his happy ending. Definitely deserved.
And again, yeah, this was something that it was an ending that sort of put into account his grand suffering that has been happening ever since he got back from 1945. His inability to truly connect and all this other stuff. It gave him the happy ending that I guess he really needed and really deserved at this point. And the logistical technicalities of time travel notwithstanding, I think it was a really good one too. Perhaps just because it's making me think about it a little, not perfect, but for what it was, I was pretty satisfied, and I think that's really what the film was satisfying. Go on.
Right. So maybe we're misunderstanding the logistics of time travel.
Who knows?
If anyone wants to tweet at us or get at us. So my understanding,
we're not infallible.
Yeah, was at the very beginning they established, due to some paradox, I don't remember, that you can't alter your own timeline. As soon as you make an alteration, it splinters off into a different timeline.
Yeah.
So the very end, where Captain America goes back, does make alterations to his timeline, and that, he does whatever he does in the 1940s to make it so that he gets to grow old and shit. That sort of flies in the face of a paradox that was. So that's sort of how we see it. We don't know if that's actually, maybe we're misunderstanding. Maybe ultimately it doesn't matter. What matters is the moment itself, which was very lovely and very nice. But I just want to know if we're being goons and just not.
If that's the case, it's not just us being goons then, because a lot of people seemed at least a little bit confused by it, and I think that's perfectly valid because they put a lot of work into all this other stuff, and this is clearly something that you're supposed to. That's how it ends the film. That's almost like the centerpiece of the ending of the film, and you're going to be thinking about it a little bit. I think that maybe it was possibly some kind of situation where they overlooked something, but who knows? It doesn't. Like I said, I don't really care that much. This kind of plot hole thing, it's very tired. It's minutia, and I'm overall, like I said, satisfied with the product. It felt like it felt like a true finale. There was very little as far as setting up things for the future. It felt like a bookend in many ways.
Really, I think the only 2 things that sort of hinted toward future happenings, the next phase, was Sam getting the shield from Captain America,
right,
sort of assuming the mantle,
just like in the comics.
Yeah, and then Thor sort of joining the Guardians,
which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, absolutely,
that should be fun. But
that'll be great.
But
just going off the interplay between Quill and Thor in
because
that last couple minutes.
It's just like dick measuring contests between the two of them all the time, and I don't know. I guess I just something about that just tickles me.
The chemistry is gonna work. It's great.
I just like seeing Peter Quill just posture for no reason, just because I find that very relatable. So even when you're in the face of a literal god, you have to just assume the posturing position.
I'm in charge.
Yeah,
you know that I'm in charge.
Yeah, it's my ship. It's my ship. Yeah, it's one of those things. But I just find it amusing. So, but yeah. It's the movie worked. The movie worked. It not perfect, but overall incredibly satisfying, funny in moments, exciting in others, very touching at the end. That one shot at the end with all the characters at the funeral for Tony Stark, terrific. Kind of reminded me of one of your favorite movies, Titanic. At the that's a running thing now. We're at the end where Rose dies, and then she ends up in the afterlife, which is like this one shot of the interior of the Titanic, and you see all the characters that were there, and then it ends with Leo. It's a lot like that. It's a kind of it's a very like somber and sentimental moments that leaves you that has you leaving the theater, feeling a mixture of emotions, and that I dig that.
Yeah, so that's another thing they did really well in this compared to past movies, wherein they had all the usual elements. They had their serious moments, they had their comic relief, and they had their just balls to the wall combat. But they did a really good job keeping them separate, which has been an issue in the past. We would have like a really just profound moment, something very just monstrous happen, and then just immediately just have the drama undercut by like a joke. And that was like not at all an issue here, luckily. So they still managed to get everything in there, but they did it in a way...
Right. I feel like Infinity War also did that pretty well, too. And I feel like Infinity War maybe by itself is a superior product, but I feel like they managed to kind of compartmentalize like the funny character stuff as well as like the sort of more weighty dramatic moments. I think they finally found like a good balance for that, because I think Civil War kind of suffered a little bit tonally in that sense, and it didn't really have the balls to end in like a truly a truly sad way, the way that Infinity War did, or the way that this one began. And I feel them sort of maybe slowly but surely, kind of experimenting a little more with tone. And I think that the Russo brothers too have also sort of improved themselves filmmaking wise, because there's a lot of good. It was hard to tell because this particular showing was so blurry, but there was a lot of good shots, a lot of good cinematic moments, and yeah, I thought it was pretty satisfying on multiple levels, like I keep saying.
We haven't really touched on the other big sort of MCU shaping moment with the death of Black Widow.
Oh, yeah.
Which, she's never been, like, a main character. She's always sort of been, like, one of the peripherals, sort of like Hawkeye.
But she has been around since almost the beginning.
Yeah.
Since Iron Man 2.
Yeah. Anything
about Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, it's about her death.
About Black Widow?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
the other two have, like, really big, like, their ramifications.
Oh, absolutely.
For that. But for this, it just, like, there is an emotional impact.
Yeah. I feel like it overall, like, it wasn't out of character or anything. I had questions originally about why her death was basically the same exact death as Gamora's death.
It's because you need to, like, give something up to get the
yeah, but it was like almost like in the way like it was shot and stuff, it seemed similar. But to me, I guess it was maybe purposely trying to have like a reflection of that death, of what actual sacrifice looks like, because we have Thanos in Infinity War throwing his daughter down,
like, voluntarily.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He was doing that to her, and sure, he felt sad about it, I guess, but ultimately he wasn't really giving anything up. He was just kind of... It was
a means to an end with him.
Exactly. Yeah. He might have felt bad about it, but he never for a second... Like most people who talk about... He was
getting, like, a bigger prize.
Exactly.
Like, it was a small sacrifice for him to, like, get...
Right, like most people who...
It's like a stepping stone.
Exactly. Like most people who advocate for this kind of population control thing. They're never the problem. It's always other people, and they're the ones that need to be dealt with. I think when we're shown that we see that version of that, but then when we see Black Widow do it, we see somebody actually giving something up for the greater good.
Yeah, both her and Hawkeye, because they were competing to see who got to take the plunge.
Yeah, which was a good little scene. I think it was a good culmination of their characters too, because they have a friendship that kind of presides through the whole film.
I think that was like a wasted opportunity, because all the way back in the first Avengers, they were like sort of building up a history between the two.
Yeah.
That you never actually get to see. I don't think.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe we will. Well, apparently this Black Widow movie is going to come out. Maybe that'll be touched upon. There's a Hawkeye show coming out, I think, as well. And that could be good, because there's some good comic runs about Hawkeye. About
Jeremy Renner has gotten the short end of the stick in these movies.
He has, and I feel like I feel like they gave him a little more in Age of Ultron, and I feel like him in this is probably the character at his most compelling. But it's still, compared to others, he's definitely like the joke. Like even in SNL a few years ago, there was that skit where it was Jeremy Renner playing Hawkeye, and they were like, okay, Hawkeye, go and fight those aliens. Like, oh, I can't, I ran out of arrows. Like, how many arrows did you have? Oh, 13 arrows. It's like, it was, yeah. And it's very easy to make fun of a character like this. It's all too easy. But, you know, there's a way to sell it. And I hopefully they'll get there at some point. I don't know if they quite got there where I'm like, oh, yeah, Hawkeye. I'm not, like, 100% on board, but his performance and, you know, a little more of the emotional meat that they gave him was a little better. And I'll give it up for that.
So, anything else you want to just add about the movie?
Okay, well, not about the movie itself. I think I've said my piece. But I did want to segue a little bit into something that we touched upon earlier about the, I guess, maybe cultural ramifications of this film. Whether it's going to be good in the long run, bad in the long run, perhaps neither, perhaps both, who knows. We both read an article about this on RogerEbert.com. When you get the chance, you should credit who the writer is, because I think it is actually kind of interesting. And I don't really agree with everything, but it is, I think, a very real look at what is happening to entertainments and to movies and to TV now in the new information age.
The author is Matt Seitz. I'll put a link to the article in the description box.
Sure,
yeah.
Good idea. And yeah, it's an interesting article. It kind of talks about something that I've always been thinking about, but always kind of faltered in articulating, which was the idea of TV versus cinema and how they're kind of almost one and the same nowadays. And because we have Game of Thrones, a show that I hear is pretty good and that neither of us watch, but is definitely an example of television adopting many of the qualities of like epic like movies of yesteryear, like Lord of the Rings, Excalibur, Conan the Barbarian, all this stuff. Big budget, high fantasy shit, really convincing set pieces and CGI, all in bite-size, like hour or so segments being fed to you. And the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the MCU, which to me is basically just a combination of the aesthetics of cinema and the storytelling qualities of TV, just kind of merging.
Yeah, it used to be with cinema, there was the expectation that the movie was it. You saw the movie, you got your hour and a half, your 2 hours, and that was it. The characters were done. It wasn't like a serialized thing. Versus now, when you go to most films, the example the article uses, of course, the MCU, but also like the Godzilla movies, like this like revival of like the kaijus, where when you go to a movie, you go with the expectation that it's going to set up like a franchise.
Yeah,
much like, you know, TV series are meant to be like a longer form thing. Movies are now doing something similar.
Not only that, but also not a movie can't exist on its own terms, obviously because of marketing and whatnot. But everything has to be an event, a cultural event that has people gabbing on the internets, and you have to be a part of that. You have to watch. You have to watch people talk about it on every single other talk show that exists. People are going to be talking about it on every YouTube channel that you find. It's more about the discourse and content that comes from the Marvel movies than the movies itself, because in many ways now it's just a machine where everything is everything is meant to just sort of move on to the next thing. There's no real sense of a beginning, middle, and end to these products anymore. And it's been going that way for a while, but I feel like it's reaching a sort of breaking point to where self-contained movies, while they might still exist, will almost be like, you won't be able to go to the theaters to watch them. All the theaters will be showing this type of like big budgets, sort of like really big pop culture fests.
Yeah, stuff with just big studios behind it. We're reaching a point where, because when we went to see this movie today, there were like 5 trailers and 4 of them were Disney movies.
Yes.
So that's sort of what we're rapidly approaching.
Right, and yeah, and Disney is is further doing this, further like going to the cycle by recycling nostalgia and I feel like in its own way, and I think the article kind of touched on this, is that classic cinema is like you will not see it except maybe in a form of nostalgia. You won't be able to watch a movie unless it's specifically about how movies used to exist and that kind of thing. And I've always had a problem with TV because of this reason, where it always it's a very capitalist product in the sense that it always exists to keep you watching, to keep you going on to the next thing, keep you absorbing emotional moments, like kind of like dopamine or whatever. And you are always meant to keep coming back, and they're always going to make more. And there used to be logical ends to a series or whatever, but now it seems like they're doing their best to keep it going and going and going
14
forever and ever.
Supernatural, a series that sort of ended like seven years ago, and they literally like killed the fucking devil.
Yeah, like
or like The Walking Dead,
by all intents and
long
purposes,
overstayed its welcome.
By all accounts, yes.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. And now a movie, like a movie series, a TV show, it can't end. It has to keep going. Or if it does end, there has to be a spin-off.
Yeah,
there has to be a spin-off or something
until they're not making money off of it anymore.
Exactly. So it's gonna be literally milked until the cow is a skeleton. It's there's gonna be no milk left for the rest of us. It's just gonna be it's gonna be dead.
Joke's on them. I drink almond milk.
Yeah, that's true. Nuts have an unlimited supply of milk.
Almond milk is, of course, low-budget indie films or cult movies from the 90s.
Oh,
I could just subsist on those for the rest of my life.
Nice.
Yeah.
It is interesting. And, we could just be panicking over nothing, because there's a lot of booms and busts when it comes to what audiences are looking for. When you look at the 70s, the people were very tired of the studio system, and that kind of brought upon a sort of new wave of American auteur films that were all self-contained, all very personal movies. And this kind of started with like Easy Rider and whatnot, but also this gave birth to a lot of directors such as Robert Altman or Martin Scorsese, etc., etc.
Keep going.
Oh yeah. But then after that, we have like people like Spielberg and Lucas, sort of inadvertently coming up with the blockbuster era, which goes into the 80s. But then in the 90s again, we have another boom of more independently produced pictures. When we have directors like Richard Linklater or Quentin Tarantino. And
my boy Kevin Smith.
Yeah, our
George season brother.
Auteur Kevin Smith, still a success to this day in all of our hearts and souls. And all these people were making movies that were basically just stuff that, and it was, by the point in the 90s, it was all pretty referential of movies in the past and stuff, but it was all stuff that was still very personal to them, and were also all meant to be self-contained products. And then, we're kind of in the next blockbuster boom, possibly, and who knows, this might be a bubble that's going to burst very soon.
I see this trend continuing for a while. Just because,
possible,
it hasn't even begun to like decline yet.
Yeah.
So
I keep thinking it's going to, but it never does.
Exactly. So it's going to keep going for a while. Luckily, just the digital age has made it super easy to like disseminate media without like big backing. So I think we're gonna get like those auteur films.
Yeah.
And I think we still kind of do, like with A24 or smaller studios.
Yeah.
I think they're just gonna be a lot harder to find.
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna get the big releases.
Right.
You're going to actually have to seek them out because they're not gonna come to you. And it's like that now, where we live in like a smaller town. Like we have movie theaters, but they don't get like that. Not even obscure. Just like, I don't know, you have your big blockbusters, you have like your A movies. They don't even get like the B, like tier below movies. Like we have to drive to like the next big city with like an actual big AMC to see those. Yeah. And I feel like that's only going to get worse.
Right, and my only fear is because I used to be more confident, where it was like, oh, okay, these things will coexist. We'll have the big blockbusters, we'll have the Marvel movies, and we'll have the TV stuff, but then we'll also have the independent films, the smaller films coming out in conjunction. But we're just seeing less and less of studios backing any kind of smaller film, not just like weirdo auteur indie films, but like genre films that aren't meant to set up big franchises, you're not seeing a lot of those anymore. Rom-coms are almost completely dead, which is a strange development. And a lot of genres are pretty much completely, like, they're on their deathbed too because of that. But my fear now is that with how some of these independent theaters are going out of business, my fear is that, like, it's just not going to be profitable enough for these people to be able to produce it on any kind of any kind of like massly, like any kind of larger scale, like larger.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're gonna have to rely on like online distribution.
I guess that's what I'm really worried about overall. Is that we're gonna get to the point where maybe being a filmmaker of this kind is just no longer going to be a viable career choice, and that's what I'm worried about. But then again, like, I don't know. Who knows what could happen? We don't seem to be anywhere close to the bust of of this phase yet, and the new kind of globalized marketing system that is almost completely run by like maybe 2 or 3 studios at this point is a disturbing trend as well. That was not the case in the 80s, or not as much as of the case in the 80s, and it's an interesting development. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen here, you know?
I do know. Yeah, we're on the same page. Huh?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So much like this phase of the MCU, this episode of Total Entertainment Forever has come to an end.
Yeah. Well, boy, we talked a lot about this. Hopefully, you guys are satisfied. This is the longest discussion of this film that I've seen thus far on the internet. So put that in your bag and smoke it. Red Letter Media, the rest of you, everyone else, bow, bend the knee to your new entertainment masters. And who are we? The new entertainment masters? Well, we're Total Entertainment Forever, and you can find us on Twitter. I was handing over to you, but that's okay. Twitter.
Total Pod Forever.
Uh-huh.
Please, like we said, talk to us. Tell us what you want us to talk about. We will do it.
It's true. We will.
We will grovel. Anything you want us to do, no matter how degrading or humiliating you think that might be.
The idea of this podcast and many podcasts is just begging for money, basically. And in order to do that, we are willing to discuss anything. That's our brand. Now, you could also find
try anything once.
Yeah, exactly. Very open-minded, the two of us. But the other places you could find us, we're on Facebook. All right, that's going to be Total Entertainment Forever on Facebook. And are you back on Instagram?
No, not yet.
Okay. Well, for the time being, then you can only find me on Instagram. And you're going to find me at McGetNoided. That's MCGETT_Noided. I will often, well, you know what? I don't often post pictures on there, but whenever I do, it's a momentous occasion.
It's quality stuff.
It is. So find me on there and find us.
Slide in his DMs.
Yeah, slide in my DMs.
See what happens.
It could be something magical. We'll see. Anyway.
And we'll see you guys later.
That's right.
You have a good one.
Terrific night, guys.